Welcome to our channel. Before we get started, please consider liking and subscribing so we can bring more stories like this to you.
Call to action. The air, sharp with brine, stung his nostrils as he hauled in the final net. Retirement had settled into a rhythm, a predictable cycle of sunrise, sea, and tranquil reflection beneath the weight of his routine. He'd almost buried the specter of his former self. Almost. The satellite phone's jarring ring ripped through the calm. Recognition was instantaneous. Sarah. Months had passed since their last strained exchange, a charade of normalcy masking the gulf between their lives. He answered. Throat. Raspy from disuse. Sarah. A stifled sob, then a ragged intake of breath. Jason. Lily. She's gone. His stomach plunged. Lily, his spirited niece, the artist, had been backpacking through Southeast Asia. Gone where? What happened? He demanded, the carefully constructed composure crumbling. Kidnapped, Sarah choked out. Malaysia, near the Strait of Malacca. A postcard. A day trip to a secluded island. And then, nothing. The police. They suspect pirates. The word landed like a blow. Pirates. I end this century? An anachronism, a throwback. Yet, the Malacca Strait, he knew it bred predators preying on the unwary. Slow down. Everything the police said. Every detail. He forced his voice level. A practiced suppression of fear morphed into action. She recounted the sparse details, her voice laced with hysteria. Lily had booked with a local outfit, small vessel. Few aboard. It never returned. No mayday, no wreckage. Just silence. Ransom, they think? She whispered, the word barely audible. No contact yet. The embassy? Informed, yes, but mired in red tape. Protocol and procedure. I need you, Jason. Please. You always fix things. Her desperation weighed on him, a familiar burden he'd thought he'd shed. He stared at the boundless ocean, its serenity a stark contrast to the tempest within. I'm coming, Sarah, he stated, each word a granite promise. Everything about this tour operator. Names, addresses, numbers. Everything. He hung up, the silence amplifying the frantic drumbeat in his chest. No time for sentiment. He secured the boat, a seasoned fisherman moving with ingrained efficiency. His mind raced. The Malacca Strait, a constricted artery of global trade, a magnet for shadow activities. He recalled briefings, simulations, theoreticals on maritime threats. His past life, the one he'd fought to forget, surged back with unwelcome potency. He booted up his laptop, the screen reflecting the sun's brutal glare. Malacca Strait piracy brought a digital deluge. Armed robberies, abductions, fuel theft, outright seizures. The news painted a bleak vista, a world of desperate men operating with impunity. He burrowed deeper, hunting for patterns, identifying potential flashpoints, studying pirate MOs. He had to grasp the terrain, the players, the perils, anticipate their moves. His fingers flew across the keyboard, navigating secure channels, accessing dormant databases, special boat service skills he'd vowed never to revisit, resurfaced with disquieting ease. Asterisk. Asterisk textbook op. Infiltration, neutralization, extraction. Hostages on a container ship in the Gulf of Aden. The air thick with diesel and the metallic tang of terror. He moved through the ship's guts, a phantom in the gloom, senses hyper-alert, movements precise. Each breath controlled, each footfall deliberate. He recalled the sharp reek of cordite, the blinding flashbang, the Somali faces contorted in shock and fear. The weapon's heft, the cold steel, the adrenaline surge. Rescued hostages. There. Faces alight with relief. And the faces of the dead. Faces that lingered in the dark hours. Asterisk. He banished the memory, the ghosts threatening to drown him. No time for dwelling on past actions, past identities. Lily was paramount. Information. Contacts, a plan. He grabbed the satellite phone. His fingers steady despite the turmoil. He knew one man who could navigate Southeast Asia's underworld. A man he'd prefer not to call, a man whose allegiance was as changeable as the tide. Chon that he punched in the number .3 rings. Then a gravelly voice. Who is this? It's been a while, Chen. Jason. A pause. Then a slow drawl. Jason, I thought you were swimming with the fishes. Not why my niece is missing in the Malacca Strait. I need your assistance. Chun chuckled. A brittle, humorless sound. The quiet fisherman is playing again. What do you require? Information. Activity in the area. Tourist snatchers. And a way to get close. This will not be without cost, old friend, Chun said, his tone turning sharp. Name it. Your re-entry, Jason. That is my price. The pirate's playground. The air in the dimly lit internet cafe hung thick with the scent of cheap cigarettes and desperation. Jason scrolled through lines of code, bypassing firewalls and encryption protocols with practiced ease that he needed information, and he needed it now. Lily's panicked phone call, cut short by static and the chilling sound of male laughter, replayed in his mind that IT had been enough to pinpoint her general location. Somewhere in the Malacca Strait. But somewhere wasn't good enough. He navigated the murky depths of the dark web, his fingers flying across the keyboard, forums dedicated to maritime crime, black market shipping manifests, chatter amongst mercenary groups. He sifted through it all. A ghost in the machine that he searched for anything that mentioned recent activity in the area, focusing on groups known for kidnapping and extortion. The Crimson Tide, a particularly vicious outfit, kept popping up. They were notorious for targeting cargo ships and demanding exorbitant ransoms. An hour bled into 2. The cafe's harsh fluorescent lights reflecting in his tired eyes, he was about to give up when a fragmented conversation, buried deep within an encrypted chat room, caught his attention. That IT spoke of a suite hall and students on scholarship, followed by coordinates that matched Lily's last known location. The Crimson Tide at IT was them. He leaned back, his chair creaking under his weight. Lily was studying marine biology, a semester abroad as part of an exchange program with the University of Singapore. She'd been ecstatic about the research trip, documenting coral reef degradation in the region. He should have been more worried that he knew the strait was rife with piracy. But he dismissed it as petty theft. Not this calculated abduction. Jason pulled up the student roster for the program, 23 names, including Lily's. 23 families thrown into the same nightmare. He felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He couldn't let them down. He needed a location. A vessel. The chat logs mentioned a rendezvous point, a small, uninhabited island used as a staging ground for their operations. He cross-referenced that with recent shipping activity in the area. A pattern emerged. A cargo ship that had been zigzagging erratically through the strait for the past week. The Golden Dawn. Registered in Panama, owned by a shell corporation in the British Virgin Islands. Textbook pirate cover. Jason accessed satellite imagery of the Golden Dawn. The ship was old, rust streaking its hull, but it appeared seaworthy. He zoomed in, searching for any indication of activity on deck. Nothing obvious. But something felt off. The ship's AIS transponder signal had been intermittent, disappearing for hours at a time. Too many coincidences that he saved the coordinates of the Golden Dawn's last known location. The information solidifying into a plan in his mind. He knew he couldn't go to the authorities. Time was of the essence, and navigating bureaucratic red tape would take too long. He had to act. And he had to act alone. He shut down the computer. The glow of the screen fading from his face. He needed to prepare. This wasn't going to be easy. The Crimson Tide were ruthless, and the Golden Dawn would be heavily guarded. But Lily was out there. Along with those other students, he wouldn't abandon them. He never had. That he wouldn't start now. He stepped out into the humid Singapore night. The city's vibrant energy a stark contrast to the cold dread in his heart. He had a ship to find, and pirates to hunt. Assembling the team. The burner phone buzzed against the gritty floor of the derelict warehouse. A jarring disruption to the water's rhythmic susurrus against the decaying pier. At Jason's gaze locked onto its screen. The program number seared into his memory. He snatched it up. The cheap plastic feeling foreign against his weathered palm. Riley, he rasped, his voice frayed by anxiety and sleeplessness. A heartbeat of silence. Then, Statham? Figured you'd vanished for good. What dragged you back into the light? Mac's voice, instantly recognizable, carried the familiar, reassuring lilt Jason relied on. Lily's been snatched. The words, blunt and unadorned, nonetheless resonated with a tangible force that crackled across the line. Mac's tone lost its ease. Abducted? By whom? Irrelevant. Retrieving her is all that matters. I require your assistance. Jason pictured Mac nodding, a concerned furrow creasing his brow. State the time, the place. Count me in. Jason delivered a swift briefing, streamlining the details, focusing solely on the critical elements. The freighter, its probable coordinates, the involvement of pirates. He registered Mac's quickened breath at the mention of the buccaneers. Understood. Mac affirmed, his voice now edged with steel. I know a few reliable faces. People who owe debts, individuals who excel under duress. Excellent. Rendezvous at the old docks. Pier 17.2 hours. Bring your gear. Jason terminated the call, the ensuing silence amplifying the weight on his shoulders. The warehouse loomed around him, its cavernous expanse echoing with the ghosts of past commerce. This was a stark contrast to his intended tranquility, but Lily's plight superseded all else. He wouldn't fail her. The ensuing hours blurred into a frenzy of preparation. Jason scrutinized the high-speed vessel he had secreted away, a dark, streamlined craft built for clandestine operations. He performed diagnostics on the engine, its potent thrum a reassuring balm against the storm raging within. Mac materialized with impeccable punctuality, accompanied by two figures seemingly plucked from the pages of a Black Ops manual. A statuesque woman with a severe haircut and keenly observant eyes, presented as Anya, and a lean, silent man named Javier, possessing the unnerving stillness of a predator poised to strike. This is it? Jason inquired, his eyes sweeping across the assembled team. Best I could muster on short notice, Mac countered. Trust me, Statham. They're exceptional. Anya's an expert in demolitions. Javier's a shadow when it comes to infiltration. Jason nodded sharply. Right. Here's the layout. He unfurled satellite imagery and blueprints on a makeshift table, the harsh glare of a single bulb illuminating the details. He outlined the freighter's structure, the estimated number of pirates, and their anticipated weaponry. Anya's gaze, laser-focused, devoured the images. Confined spaces, she noted. Numerous blind spots could prove challenging. Challenging is our forte, Javier breathed, his voice surprisingly gentle, almost a murmur. Jason detailed the strategy, emphasizing alacrity and precision. We board under the cloak of night. Mac, you remain with the vessel, providing medical support if necessary. Anya, you're on breach. Javier, you're with me. Our priority is locating Lily and extracting her. Avoid unnecessary bloodshed. Cannot guarantee that last element, Anya grumbled, her tone laced with steely resolve. The following hour was devoted to the meticulous preparation of their equipment. Jason verified his sidearm, the comforting heft of the Glock reassuring in his grip. Mac deployed his medical kit, arranging the instruments with practiced efficiency. Anya primed her explosives, her movements efficient and economical. Javier honed his blades, the flash of steel a silent promise of lethal efficiency. As the last vestiges of daylight surrendered to the encroaching darkness, painting the docks in long, elongated shadows, Jason addressed the team. Remember, he stated, his voice hushed yet forceful. Swift entry, decisive action, Lily's extraction. Let's move out. Into the storm. The South China Sea churned, a roiling cauldron of gray. Rain lashed against the bridge windows of the Neptune's wake, blurring the already distorted horizon. Jason gripped the helm, his knuckles white against the cold steel. The cargo ship pitched violently, each swell threatening to swallow them whole. 30 knots and building, Captain? Mac yelled over the howling wind, securing himself to a stanchion. His face was pale, but his voice remained steady. Barometers dropping like a stone. This ain't just a squall. It's a full-blown typhoon brewing. Jason grunted, his eyes fixed on the radar screen. A blip pulsed stubbornly, the signal from the Golden Dawn. They were closing the distance, but at a brutal cost. ETA to interception? Mac consulted his handheld device. At this speed, 2 hours, give or take. Assuming we don't end up feeding the fishes first. He managed a weak grin, a flash of humor against the grim backdrop. The ship groaned under the strain of the waves below deck. He could hear the muffled crashes as unsecured cargo shifted. He hoped his small team were all holding tight. The rescue of his niece depended on reaching that freighter, and nature seemed determined to throw every obstacle in their path. "Reduce speed to 15 knots, Jason ordered, his voice barely audible above the storm. "We'll take it slower, but we'll take it." Steady, NO point arriving in pieces. The Neptune's wake shuddered as the engines throttled back. The reduced speed eased the violent pitching, but the mountainous waves still slammed against the hull, sending tremors through the ship. He adjusted course slightly, trying to navigate the treacherous troughs that formed between the crests. "Radar's picking up something else, Captain," Mac announced, his voice tightening. "Small craft, heading our way, looks like speedboats." Jason swore under his breath. Pirates. He'd hoped the storm would deter any opportunistic scavengers, but desperation often trumped common sense. "Range, closing fast. Less than 5 nautical miles. They're using the storm as cover." His mind raced, calculating their options. Engaging in a high-speed chase in these conditions was suicide. But letting them board was unthinkable. His niece's life was on the line. "Arm yourselves," he barked into the comm system. "Prepare for contact. Mac, you're with me." He grabbed his tactical vest from a locker, the weight familiar and reassuring. The rain plastered his hair to his forehead as he stepped out onto the exposed deck. The wind tore at him, threatening to rip him from his feet. Mac followed close behind, a medical kit slung across his chest and a rifle in his hand. The speedboats emerged from the swirling rain and mist, sleek and menacing. He counted 3, each packed with armed figures. They were fast, nimble, and determined. "They're flanking us," Mac yelled, pointing to the port and starboard sides. "Looks like they mean business." "They always do," Jason replied grimly. He raised his rifle, took aim, and squeezed the trigger. A burst of controlled fire ripped through the air, directed at the lead boat. He wasn't aiming to kill, just to disable. The pirates returned fire, bullets ricocheting off the steel deck around them. He and Mac dove for cover behind a stack of shipping containers, the metallic clang deafening. "We can't hold them off forever, Captain," Mac shouted over the din. "We need a plan." Jason scanned their surroundings, his mind working furiously. The storm offered both danger and opportunity. "We use the storm to our advantage. Mac, get below and flood the lower decks on their approach. When they board, they will be met with more than they bargained for." Jason took a deep breath, steeling himself for the coming confrontation. He knew the risks, but he had no other choice. His niece was counting on him. He would navigate this storm, both literal and figurative, and he would bring her home, boarding the Dawn. Rain lashed down, a blinding curtain drawn across the churning ocean. Below, the Zodiac bobbed like a cork, its powerful engine straining against the waves. Jason gripped the helm, his knuckles white, squinting through the downpour at the looming shadow of the Golden Dawn. The cargo ship, a leviathan of steel and rust, was barely visible in the tempestuous night. "Almost there," Mac yelled over the roar of the engine and the wind's howl. His words snatched away by the storm. He clutched a waterproof satchel filled with medical supplies. His face pale but determined. Beside him, Liam checked his silenced MP5. His movements precise and efficient. Jason cut the engine, letting the Zodiac drift silently toward the Golden Dawn's hull. The plan was simple. Scale the side using grappling hooks, neutralize the lookouts, and secure a perimeter before the main force. Realize they were aboard. Simple in theory, a death wish in practice. The first grappling hook snagged with a metallic clang. Muffled by the storm, Liam went up first, a dark silhouette against the turbulent sky. Jason followed, the wind tearing at his clothes, the rain stinging his eyes. The steel of the ship was cold and slick beneath his gloved hands. He reached the top, pulling himself over the railing onto a narrow catwalk. Liam was already engaging the first lookout, a hulking figure struggling. Against Liam's superior speed and skill, the silenced MP5 coughed twice, and the lookout slumped soundlessly to the deck. "One down," Liam hissed, dragging the body into the shadows. "Another one's probably close by." They moved cautiously along the catwalk, the wind and rain masking their approach. The second lookout was perched on a small platform overlooking the main deck, a cigarette glowing like a malevolent firefly in the darkness. Jason signaled Liam to stay back. He moved with the stealth of a predator, his footsteps silent on the metal grating. Reaching the platform, he vaulted over the railing, landing behind the lookout with a thud. The man whirled around, his eyes widening in surprise as Jason's fist connected with his jaw. He went down hard, unconscious before he hit the deck. "Mac, up here?" Jason called softly, his voice barely audible above the storm. Mac scaled the side, looking even more green around the gills than before. "Remind me again why we couldn't just call the Coast Guard?" he muttered, pulling himself onto the catwalk. "Because time is a luxury we don't have," Jason replied grimly. "We secure this deck, then find Sarah." They split up, Jason taking the port side, Liam the starboard, and Mac covering the rear. The deck was deserted, the crew likely taking shelter from the storm below. But Jason knew it wouldn't stay that way for long. He checked each door and hatch, his senses on high alert. The air was thick with the smell of salt, diesel, and something else, something acrid and metallic. The tang of blood. A sudden shout erupted from the starboard side, followed by the staccato bursts of automatic gunfire. Liam was engaged. "Mac with me," Jason yelled, sprinting toward the sound of the gunfire. He rounded a corner and saw Liam pinned down behind a stack of crates, taking fire from two pirates armed with AK-47s. The bullets ricocheted off the metal, sending sparks flying. Jason didn't hesitate. He drew his pistol, firing two quick shots. One pirate went down, clutching his chest. The other spun around, his eyes widening in surprise. Jason fired again, and the second pirate crumpled to the deck. Liam rose from behind the crates, dusting off his clothes. "Thanks," he said, his voice tight. "They almost had me." "Almost doesn't count," Jason replied, his eyes scanning the surrounding area. "Let's move." They know we're here now. The storm raged on, but inside the golden dawn, a different kind of storm was brewing. The hunt had begun. Razor's edge. The air inside the cargo hold hung thick with the stench of stale diesel and something metallic, like old blood. Jason signaled Mac and Elena to stay close as he moved forward, his pulse a steady drumbeat against the sudden, suffocating silence. The ship had been eerily deserted since they'd breached the outer deck, too deserted. Then, a voice, laced with a chilling amusement, shattered the quiet. "Welcome aboard. I was beginning to think you wouldn't show." From the shadows stepped a man who seemed carved from granite and malice. Razor Raskov. He was taller than Jason expected, his face a roadmap of scars that spoke of a life lived on the edge of a blade. His eyes, cold and predatory, assessed them with clinical detachment. "You're making a mistake, Raskov," Jason said, his voice low and steady, masking the coiled tension within. "Let the girl go. This doesn't have to get any messier." Raskov chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. "Messier? Oh, but where's the fun in that? Besides," he gestured with a hand that bore a heavy, ornate ring. "She's proving to be quite resourceful. A shame to simply let her go." He snapped his fingers. The lights flickered and died, plunging the cargo hold into near darkness. From the maze of shipping containers, a cacophony of gunfire erupted. Red laser sights danced across the gloom, painting fleeting targets on their bodies. "Breaching formation," Jason barked, shoving Elena behind a stack of crates. He dropped to a crouch, his silenced pistol spitting lead. Mac, ever the pragmatist, already had a smoke grenade deployed, creating a swirling cloud of obfuscation. The pirates, emboldened by the darkness, surged forward. One, a hulking brute with a chain wrapped around his fist, charged Jason. He sidestepped the attack, the chain whistling past his ear, and slammed the butt of his pistol into the man's temple. He dropped like a felled tree. "They're using thermal," Mac yelled, his voice strained. "The smoke won't hold them for long." Jason scanned the hold, adrenaline sharpening his senses. The layout was a death trap, a labyrinth of steel boxes and narrow corridors that he needed to find an advantage, something to turn the tide. A grinding sound echoed from above. A section of the ceiling, rigged with explosives, detonated, showering them with sparks and debris. Jason shoved Elena to the ground, shielding her with his body. The blast ripped through the air, deafening and disorienting. Raskov's playing for keeps. Elena coughed, scrambling to her feet. Jason nodded grimly. He could hear the pirates regrouping, their voices a guttural snarl in the darkness. This wasn't just about the ransom anymore. This was about making an example. About sending a message. He spotted a flickering emergency light near a service corridor. That way, he ordered. Mac, cover R6. They moved quickly, weaving through the wreckage. The corridor was narrow and claustrophobic, the air thick with the acrid smell of burnt metal. They could hear the pirates closing in, their heavy footsteps echoing behind them. Suddenly, a tripwire snapped taut at a net, weighted with sharp metal shards, dropped from the ceiling. Jason reacted instantly, tackling Elena out of the way. The net slammed onto the ground where they had been standing, the shards glinting menacingly in the dim light. Damn it! Mac cursed from behind. They're turning this ship into a bloody playground. Jason scanned the corridor ahead. Another trap, he could see it now. A pressure plate hidden beneath a layer of dust. He pointed it out to Elena. Careful. These guys are thorough. They stepped over the plate, their movements deliberate and precise. The corridor opened into a small engine room, the hum of machinery a welcome change from the oppressive silence of the cargo hold. But their respite was short-lived. Raskov stood waiting for them, a wicked grin on his face, eye in his hand. He held a detonator. End of the line, he said, his voice dripping with venom. I admire your tenacity, Statham, but even you can't escape this. He raised the detonator. Any last words? Hostage hold. The air in the corridor vibrated with the echoes of gunfire. Jason kicked open the reinforced steel door leading to the ship's hold, the metal screaming in protest. Mac was right behind him, weapon raised, scanning the cavernous space within it. It was a labyrinth of stacked crates and cargo containers. The air thick with the smell of diesel and something else. Something acrid and metallic, like burnt wiring. Clear, Mac yelled, his voice barely audible over the residual ringing in Jason's ears. Jason moved deeper into the hold, his senses on high alert. He could hear faint sounds, muffled sobs, whispered prayers. The hostages. He moved toward the sound, pushing past a precariously balanced stack of crates labeled fragile. And then he saw them, huddled together in the far corner of the hold, surrounded by armed men in ragged fatigues. Panic flashed across their faces as they saw Jason and Mac, quickly replaced by a flicker of hope. Among them, her eyes wide with fear but burning with defiance, was Lily. Jason, she cried, scrambling to her feet. Stay down, Jason barked, firing a short burst at the pirates guarding them. They returned fire, bullets ricocheting off the metal containers. Mac moved to provide cover, expertly picking off the closest threats. Jason sprinted towards the hostages, weaving between the crates, adrenaline surging through his veins. He reached them, pulling Lily into a tight embrace. You okay? He asked, his voice rough. I'm okay. But Lily's eyes darted around the hold, a new wave of fear washing over her. There's something you need to see. She pulled him towards a large metal container in the center of the hold. Attached to the container, almost invisible against the dull gray metal, was a series of wires. Wires that led to a complex-looking device with a digital timer counting down. 00:07:32. Jason recognized it instantly. C4, a lot of C4. Raskov? He muttered, his jaw tightening. The man wasn't just cruel. He was methodical. He wasn't planning on a simple escape. He was planning on taking everyone with him. Mac! Jason yelled, his voice strained. We've got a problem. A big one. Mac joined them, his face paling as he took in the scene. That's a lot of boom. We need to get these people out of here, Jason said, his mind racing. Now. No time, Lily interjected, her voice surprisingly steady. The pirates said there are pressure plates all around the hold. If we move too fast, we'll trigger them. Jason cursed under his breath. Raskov had thought of everything. He was playing a twisted game of cat and mouse, and the stakes were higher than ever. Can you disarm it? Mac asked, his eyes fixed on the timer, which was now ticking below 7 minutes. Jason examined the device more closely. He could see the wiring, the detonator, but it was unlike anything he'd encountered before. Raskov had clearly gone to great lengths to ensure this bomb couldn't be easily defused. "I don't know," Jason admitted, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. He hated admitting defeat, especially with Lily's life, everyone's lives, hanging in the balance. "But I'm going to try." He pulled out his knife, the cool steel of familiar comfort in his hand. Taking a deep breath, he began to trace the wires, his movements slow and deliberate. Each second felt like an eternity, the ticking of the timer a deafening roar in the silence. Lily watched him, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and terror. Mac stood guard, his weapon raised, his knuckles white as he gripped it. The air was thick with tension, the smell of diesel and burnt wiring now mixed with the metallic tang of fear. Time was running out. Showdown on the bridge. The last wire snipped, Jason straightened, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. The low hum, the death rattle of the deactivated explosives, filled the bridge. "Clear," he rasped, turning to Mac, who was tending to a gash on Lily's arm. "About time," Mac muttered, dabbing antiseptic. "Another minute and we'd be fishing you out of the Aegean." Lily winced, but her eyes were sharp. "He's coming, isn't he?" Jason nodded grimly. He could hear the heavy thud of boots on the metal stairs. Raskov's guttural shouting growing louder. "Brace yourselves." Raskov burst onto the bridge, two of his men flanking him, AK-47s raised. His face was a mask of fury, veins throbbing in his neck. "You think you can outsmart me, Statham? You think you can take what is mine?" Jason stepped forward, shielding Lily and Mac. "It was never yours to begin with." A shot rang out, not from Raskov's men, but from Lily that she'd snatched a pistol from a fallen pirate earlier, and the bullet whizzed past Raskov's ear, embedding itself in the console behind him. That it wasn't a killing shot, but a message. A declaration. Raskov staggered back, momentarily stunned. His men, caught off guard, hesitated. That was all Jason needed. He moved like a viper, disarming the first pirate with a swift kick to the wrist, then using the man as a shield against the second. The ensuing shots ricocheted off the metal walls, deafening in the confined space. He tossed the limp body aside and lunged at Raskov. "Get them out of here!" Jason yelled to Mac as he tackled Raskov. The fight was brutal, a savage dance of fists and fury. Raskov, despite his size, was surprisingly agile, his movements fueled by rage and desperation. He landed a blow to Jason's jaw that sent stars exploding behind his eyes. Jason staggered, but refused to fall. He tasted blood, the metallic tang sharp on his tongue. He countered with a series of precise strikes, targeting Raskov's pressure points. A blow to the solar plexus doubled the pirate over, gasping for air. He followed with a knee to the face, sending Raskov sprawling. Raskov, momentarily dazed, grabbed a broken piece of the console, the jagged metal glinting in the dim light. He lunged, aiming for Jason's throat. Jason sidestepped, the metal tearing a gash across his arm. He ignored the pain, seizing Raskov's wrist. A sickening crack echoed through the bridge as he twisted, dislocating the pirate's shoulder. Raskov roared in agony, dropping the makeshift weapon. Jason didn't hesitate. He delivered a final, crushing blow to Raskov's temple. The pirate slumped to the floor, unconscious. Silence descended, broken only by Jason's ragged breathing and the creaking of the ship. He glanced around, checking on Mac and Lily, who were huddled near the doorway. Mac gave him a curt nod, indicating they were all right. "We need to move," Jason said, his voice strained. "Now." As if on cue, the ship lurched violently. An alarm blared, a high-pitched wail that cut through the silence. "What was that?" Lily asked, her voice trembling. Jason's gaze darted to the control panel. Red lights flashed ominously. He rigged more than just explosives. He damaged the engine room. "We're losing power, and we're taking on water." He pointed to a view screen. "And a storm is rolling in." The Aegean Sea was no longer the calm expanse they had crossed to arrive. Dark clouds churned on the horizon, and the waves were rising, slamming against the hull with increasing force. "Looks like our troubles aren't over yet," Mac stated grimly. Jason stared out at the raging sea, his face etched with determination. "Not by a long shot." escape and reunion. The Golden Dawn shuddered, a dying leviathan spewing metal groans into the rapidly swallowing corridors. Now! Jason's command sliced through the pandemonium, and he propelled another terrified figure toward the rope ladder. Dancing a precarious jig above the frothing maw of the ocean, rain hammered down, obscuring the already treacherous exodus. Mac, face ashen but determined, cinched the last wounded soul into a jury-rigged sling. Go! I'm right behind. Lily's small fingers, like tenacious vines, gripped Jason's hand. What about you? Her voice battled the gale. We're sweepers, he affirmed, eyes painting the scene. The stern already plunged, a slow-motion surrender to the waves. Trust me on this. He clipped Lily into another safety rig, her terror a tangible weight even amidst the chaotic shuffle. Testing the line, he offered a reassuring flicker of a smile. Ready to fly. Below, their own vessel, a predatory shadow compared to the doomed freighter, pitched wildly. Its crew, faces set like granite, hauled the rescued aboard, one by agonizing one as Lily began her perilous slide. A cataclysmic blast tore through the Golden Dawn, rocking Jason to his core as a savage piece of debris screamed past his ear, sinking its teeth into Mac's shoulder. Mac! Jason bellowed, steadying his friend as he faltered. Mac bit back a cry, his features twisting in agony. Get out. I'm good. Just a nick. Jason didn't waste breath arguing time had become a ravenous beast. He helped Mac secure himself to the line, watching his descent, each movement tight with pain. Jason followed, rappelling with ingrained expertise, his gaze relentlessly surveying the crumbling ship. The plunge was a maelstrom of wind-driven spray and the sickening symphony of rending steel. He landed hard on the pitching deck, pulling Lily into the shelter of his arms. Mac already occupied the crew's attention. His shirt blossomed. With crimson. Full throttle. Jason roared, and the engines answered with a guttural surge. They bolted. Abandoning the Golden Dawn to its sepulcher, Jason witnessed the freighter's final, agonizing tilt. Its lights winking out before the ocean claimed it entirely. That a cold fist clenched his heart. Regret for the vanished lives, for the brutal calculus of survival. But he knew he'd wrung every last drop of effort from the situation. The Tempest continued its assault, but their craft knifed through the waves, resolute. Jason enveloped Lily in a blanket, his gaze locked on the horizon. They were bound for a secret refuge, a verdant sanctuary whispered about only in select circles, where they could lick their wounds and regroup. Hours later, bruised but unbowed, they slipped into a secluded cove. The island radiated serenity, a tapestry of vibrant foliage and virgin beaches. A modest clinic, weathered by countless storms, peaked. From the palms, a beacon of hope against the backdrop of destruction. Mac was whisked inside, his wound direr than he'd confessed. Jason patrolled outside, anxiety a palpable force field around him. Lily sat silently beside him, her eyes reflecting the storm they'd survived at last. The doctor emerged, fatigue carved into his face. He'll pull through, he declared, his voice drained. Loss of blood, but stabilized. Relief flooded Jason, leaving him momentarily unsteady. He turned to Lily, kneeling to meet her gaze. It's over, he murmured, his voice rough with tenderness. You're secure now. He ushered her toward a small cabin, its windows spilling warmth. Inside, a woman stood, her face etched with concern as Lily stepped into the light. The woman's breath hitched, her eyes widening in disbelief. Lily? She cried, surging forward to engulf her daughter. Lily melted into her mother's embrace, tears streaming freely. Jason observed the reunion, a hard knot forming in his throat. The raw, unfiltered emotion stood in stark contrast to the sterile calculations that usually governed his existence. He receded, granting them privacy. His promise fulfilled, he had delivered Lily home. But as he turned to depart, Lily detached from her mother and bolted back to him. She wrapped her arms around his legs, clinging with fierce gratitude. Thank you, she breathed, for saving me. Jason knelt, his hand gently brushing her hair. You're safe, he repeated, the words gravelly with emotion. That's what matters. He met the gaze of Lily's mother across the room. He saw gratitude, relief, and something more, a glimmer of understanding. He nodded once, curtly, then retreated into the inky night, forsaking the warmth and light, returning to the shadows where he operated best. The world still needed him.